TitleMatchNetwork.com.
You went back to WCW for like a little while, but then it seemed like you had a time period from like '94 to like '96, right before you went to the WWF as the Goon, where you were kind of out of the spotlight for a little while. Did you go into semi-retirement at the time, or did you just do like spare indies here?
Yeah, I was. We were living in Texas, and it was one of those things where you had a place in Texas, and there wasn't a lot going on. I mean, the '90s, there wasn't a hell of a lot going on everywhere. And I've been to those places, I'm at the end of a run, basically. The end of my time is coming, right?
Yeah.
Didn't know it, but now you look back, it's pretty much, you're coming to the end. And so I think just for a couple of years, I was just home doing independent stuff, jumping to Japan a little bit. I think that's about the time I was over with Gordy on the, maybe it was. Anyway. So, but no, at that time, before I went for the Goon, I was just home.
A lot of the newer fans may remember you as the Goon in the WWF. How did you wind up going to the WWF and the whole Goon gimmick and everything?
I don't know. I guess it was Brother Love.
Bruce Pritchard.
Bruce Pritchard, I've known him, and he was out there. And of course, you're always trying to. The one place that I'd never gotten to in my career was New York. Hadn't been there. And of course, he's out there. A lot of my friends have been out there, in and out. And when I was on the road before, I didn't need to go. But now it's the end, and I hadn't been there. I always wanted to. Why not go? And of course, you talk to them, and finally they were looking for, they called, myself and the plumber, what's his name?
Dirty White Boy,
yeah,
Tony
Dirty
Anthony.
White Tony. Hey, Tony. God, I haven't seen him in a long time either. And there was another kid.
Tracy Smothers was?
Tracy Smothers, and one more. He was down, he went as the shooter, the little shooter guy.
I forget.
Yeah, you know who I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Anyway. They just, they had us, they were going to pick up some guys, and so they said, we're going to pick you up, why don't you come on out? And so I go out there, and they said, well, what would you do? What, short of Wild Bill, what would you do? And I was just sitting there with Pritchard, and I said, well, I don't know, it just came to my mind right there. I said, you've had baseball, football, you've never had a hockey player. You've never had a hockey player come to the, WWF, and I just off the top of my head, I'm like, hockey player beats everybody up, and they kicked him out of the league, let him do that, and he goes, maybe, and so then we, go on, and then they called me later, and Vince came up with the name the Goon. Evidently, he thought it was a great idea, and they said, well, and I said, well, if you're going to do the Goon thing, because I had, I played hockey. Right, and playing hockey and wrestling, well, you work as hard or harder at hockey. And I says, I can wear all the equipment and wear it in the ring. Really? And I said, well, yeah, that ain't hard. Shin pads, they don't weigh nothing. The equipment's nothing. And then we were trying to figure out, well, what are you gonna wear on your feet? And I was thinking, well, what about some boots? And I said, well, wait a minute, why don't we just get a pair of skates, take the toque is what it's called, take the toque off down there, and put the crepe soling and narrow it down so that it looks like a skate. And we'll just see what it happens. So we bought a pair of tack skates, and they took it and did it, and I put them on. It's like walking on a pair of skates. It's not really hard at all. Everybody says, how do you walk on those? It's not. It's simple, and then the rest of it is, you're just wrestling in all that equipment. And I think when they did it, they thought, oh, this will be cool. And it was. Everybody seemed to like it. They didn't know what to do with it. I mean, what to do. It was kind of the end of the gimmick wrestling situation stuff, that, like I said, everything goes in cycles. And, they used to have the bushwhackers and the crazy things and the different, character things that worked for a while. And this was one that was at the end, and I just don't think they knew exactly what to do with it. You know, who to put you with, what do you do with the character, right? You know, we had some fun with it, and I think a lot of people liked it. And like when I go now, I still hear people going, the Goon, the Goon. The people seem to like it, but what exactly to do with the character? Who does he go with? You know, I remember I wrote when I first was out there, The Rock was just starting, and he was just young. You know, I said, well, the Goon and The Rock, you know, the Goon could have a Stanley Cup matches because it was about that time. It was just starting the Stanley Cup for that year.
Okay.
And you know, it could be a thing where it was the Goon versus The Rock for Stanley's Cup, right? And it would be the best of 7, right? Boom! And every time you'd have a match, the winner got this cup. Well, whenever The Rock would win, he would get a nice, beautiful cup to be carried to the next match, which is a best of 7 series. And every time the Goon would win, he would get an actual old used hockey cup supporter hanging. And he goes, it's Stanley's cup. Right?
Yeah.
But anyway, it didn't make it anyway. It fell on the cutting room floor, if you will. But, you know, it was just an idea, and you know, obviously The Rock, maybe they had something else, but it was just an idea, and just silly stuff like that, it could be done, you know. But again, like I say, it was a good character. I think people kind of got a kick out of it, but what to do with it.
Yeah. Did you like Vince?
Yeah, I mean, I didn't have a lot of, you know, sit down talks with him, you know.
Yeah.
But the time that I've ever met him, he's always been cordial and nice to me, you know. And I can't complain, yeah. I mean, I don't think I've spoken too many words to him. I mean, it's not like I sit and had dinner with him.
Yeah.
Nothing. But he's always been fine. Everybody out there has always been fine, you know. Everybody's always very cordial and everything.
What do you remember about the Clique, about Shawn and Scott Hall and all of them? Were they there when you were there, Scott Hall and Kevin Nash?
Scott Hall and Nash and those guys were more down in Atlanta.
Oh, okay.
And I was there, and they were all there.
Shawn, did you work with Shawn up there?
Shawn Michaels? Or?
Yeah.
Shawn Michaels, I haven't worked a lot with him, no. But he was, you know, I remember back when him and Marty Jannetty were together years and years ago, and I knew him a little bit then, but they were real young, and then of course they went off, and Shawn's been up there, you know.
Yeah.
I was never really in a territory anywhere with Shawn that I can remember that, but he's been up there.
Yeah.
I mean, forever, you know, and, you know, he knew who I was, and I've known who he is, and so we talk, and, you know, mutual respect and all that sort of thing, but, you know, truthfully, I don't think I've been in a territory with him.
Yeah. Now, were you up there as a Goon when Steve Austin started taking off, when the whole Stone Cold thing?
Yeah, when
Yeah.
I first, yeah.
Yeah. Did you know Steve from
Well, Steve was down in Texas,
Yeah.
breaking in with chair shots again.
Yeah.
No, the British guy.
Chris Adams.
Chris Adams. He
yeah.
broke in through Chris, and you know, and the Renegade thing down there with the Jarrett's and those guys, and he kind of came in through all of that, and I remember him down there, right? And he knew who I was, and then he was getting going up there with that.
Did you kind of have an idea that Vince was, you know, really didn't have anything for you when he decided to let you go, or did it kind of surprise you, or?
Well, no, it's not a big surprise, you know. You could, after you've been there for a couple of months and doing stuff and there's not much going on, I could tell.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm no dummy. I mean, I know it's kind of a gimmick thing, and I could tell that it, you know, they didn't quite know what to do with it, and the bookings got less and less, and
yeah. What led you to finally just retire?
Well, it's, you know, really didn't retire. It's kind of like time moves on, you know.
Yeah.
It's now 1995. You know, my son's born. The Goon is dead, you know. I'm in Texas, and I'm thinking, you know, everybody I knew in Texas is either dead or moved back home, you know. Terry Gordy's went back into Tennessee, and Buddy's up in Chicago, Michael's out in Atlanta, Jimmy Garvin went back to Charlotte, all the Von Erichs are dead. You know, it was just time, and I thought, oh yeah, I'm just moving home.
Yeah.
It was just time, you know. And then when I got home, I ran into Ken Patera, and I worked for another year every weekend for Ken Patera up there. But then Ken kind of, you know, got out of it and didn't promote that much anymore, and then it just died, and, you know, it just filtered away.
Yeah.
It's not like I actively said, okay, I'm retiring.
Yeah.
You know, it just took off. It just slowly died, kind of like the way it started.
Yeah. What do you do for a living?
Well, now I work with a construction company. A guy I met through wrestling.
Oh, okay.
Has a construction company, Mike Morrow. You know, one of the Blackhearts. I don't know if anybody knows who they are, but they were with us in Texas, and him and Buster. And he got in for a few years, and then after that he got back out, went back to his construction, and he's called me a couple times and said, well, I need someone to do this. Well, okay, you know. So right now I work for him.
Okay. Were you surprised when you got called to come back for WrestleMania 17?
Yeah. WrestleMania 17 was a funny one. Michael called me. And he says, are you ready to go one more time? I go, what do you mean? He says, well, you want to go? You want to be on WrestleMania? I said, shut up. You know, he says, no, really, do you want to be on WrestleMania? Well, yeah, what? He says, well, you're going to do this thing, bring the Goon out, it's just for this one time. I says, what? I'm in, you know, why wouldn't I?
Right.
You know, it's, you know, well, of course. Why not? What do I got to lose? Fun, you know, go see the boys, have a little bit of fun, you know, whatever. And, you know, it was nice when they called me here just for the 15-year thing with Raw. You know, yeah. Again, I think it's that the Goon thing is kind of fun. They just don't know what to do with it, you know.
Yeah.
You know.
It's got to be flattering, you know, that even after all these years, you're still, you know, in their Rolodex. You're still on the top of their brains when it comes to, you know, something, whether it's nostalgia or.
Well, yeah, I guess that, yeah, you'd have to say that is. It's nice to think that they still remember you, and you know. They think, well, wait a minute now, he can still do that. And yeah, it's always there, yeah. I guess, you know, as long as you've got somebody there, and that, especially if I didn't know anybody in there that you don't say hello to, you know, Michael and John, right, you know. Yeah. But then again, Briscoe, Jerry, I worked with Jerry Briscoe in Florida years ago, you know. God, you know, there was a lot of people there that my brother knew and all those things. So, yeah. It is nice to think that, well, we still think, well, what about old Irwin over there?
Yeah. Any good Iron Chic stories from WrestleMania 17?
WrestleMania 17, the Iron Chic. Well, everybody knows the only reason he won was because nobody wanted to throw him over the top rope because they were afraid it'd kill him. That bad foot of his, right? He was scary enough just walking down to the ring, much less trying to throw him over the top. So anyway, you know, Cosgrove he's a good guy, you know. Many silly stories about him. Ha, 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 you jabroni, you at that bar here, all these professional superstars, and hey, jabroni, maybe you buy a little drink for everybody. And if not, maybe Sheiky Baby take you out on the dance floor, maybe little suplex. What you think, huh, baby? What you think? Oh, God, stories like that, all the time.
Watch thousands of exclusive shoot interviews right now on TitleMatchNetwork.com.